The Force bound together every living thing in the galaxy. It flowed through Jedi Masters meditating within the towering spires of Coruscant. It flowed through clone troopers fighting and dying on distant battlefields. It flowed through smugglers navigating dangerous hyperspace routes and through Sith Lords hiding behind layers of deception. For thousands of years, the Force had witnessed every triumph, every tragedy, every war, and every empire. It had seen civilizations rise and collapse into dust. It had seen ancient Sith empires burn and Jedi orders rebuilt from ruin. Yet there were places beyond even its familiar reach. Beyond the charts of Republic explorers. Beyond the territories claimed by the Separatist alliance. Beyond the unknown regions themselves. In the cold darkness between realities, something was moving. Something ancient. Something relentless. Something that did not seek conquest, glory, or power. It sought only perfection. And it had finally found a new galaxy to consume. The Clone Wars raged across thousands of systems. Entire sectors burned beneath endless campaigns while politicians on Coruscant debated strategy and survival. Venator-class star destroyers filled the hyperspace lanes, transporting clone armies toward distant fronts. Separatist dreadnoughts gathered around contested worlds, preparing new offensives. Across the galaxy, the machinery of war had become as familiar as the stars themselves. Yet in the forgotten reaches of the Outer Rim, strange reports had begun to emerge. At first, the disappearances seemed insignificant. A merchant convoy vanished while traveling between remote mining colonies. A Republic patrol failed to arrive at a scheduled rendezvous. A Separatist reconnaissance vessel disappeared beyond a little-used hyperspace route. Such losses were unfortunate, but hardly unusual during wartime. Pirates, navigational accidents, and enemy ambushes claimed ships every day. Then the numbers began to grow. Entire convoys disappeared without distress signals. Long-range listening stations suddenly went silent. Remote settlements reported sightings of impossible vessels before all communication ceased. The reports came from different regions, different sectors, and different governments, yet every description shared the same unsettling details. Cube-shaped ships. Massive. Silent. Unidentified. The Republic initially blamed the Separatists. The Separatists blamed the Republic. Intelligence agencies on both sides assumed some secret weapons program had escaped containment. Investigations were launched. Fleets were redirected. Scouts were dispatched. None returned. Deep within the Republic military intelligence headquarters on Coruscant, analysts stared at expanding maps filled with blinking red markers. The glowing indicators represented missing ships, vanished outposts, and disrupted communication networks. The pattern should not have existed. The incidents were separated by thousands of light years, yet they formed a strange geometric progression spreading outward from the unknown regions. The realization disturbed everyone who studied it. Whatever was responsible was moving with purpose. Meanwhile, aboard a Republic reconnaissance frigate operating near the edge of explored space, Captain Turin Voss studied sensor readings that made no sense. The vessel had been assigned to investigate the disappearance of 3 patrol groups near an abandoned trade corridor. The mission had seemed routine when it began. Now it felt increasingly dangerous. Outside the viewport stretched an ocean of stars untouched by civilization. There were no colonies here. No major hyperspace routes. No strategic objectives worth fighting over. Only darkness and silence. The frigate's sensors suddenly registered an anomaly. At first it appeared as a faint energy fluctuation. Then the readings multiplied. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances as more contacts materialized across their displays. Long-range scanners struggled to classify them. Mass readings exceeded anything found in Republic databases. Power signatures shifted unpredictably. Conventional identification systems returned no matches. Something enormous had appeared ahead. As the frigate advanced cautiously, the darkness parted to reveal an object unlike anything the crew had ever seen. The vessel was a perfect cube. Its immense metallic surface stretched across kilometers of empty space. Thousands of illuminated structures protruded from its sides in organized patterns. Green energy pulsed beneath armor plating thicker than a capital ship's hull. There were no visible engines. No Republic markings. No Separatist insignias. It simply existed. Silent. Motionless. Watching. A chill spread through the bridge. The cube dwarfed the frigate completely. Captain Voss ordered immediate withdrawal and transmission of all gathered data. The communications officer attempted to comply. Nothing happened. Every frequency had gone dead. Every channel returned static. Then the cube moved. Not gradually. Not through visible propulsion. It simply accelerated. The impossible mass surged forward with terrifying speed. Alarms erupted throughout the frigate. Weapons systems locked automatically onto the approaching object. Turbolasers fired. Brilliant red energy slammed into the cube's surface. The attacks achieved nothing. Adaptive energy fields rippled across the alien vessel. The impacts vanished without leaving visible damage. Then green beams erupted from the cube. The frigate's shields collapsed instantly. Hull plating melted. Power systems failed. Crew members were thrown from their stations as explosions tore through multiple decks. For several desperate minutes, the Republic vessel fought for survival against an enemy it could neither understand nor harm. Then the boarding began. Transport signatures appeared throughout the ship. Figures materialized within corridors. At first, surviving crew members assumed they were droids. The newcomers moved with mechanical precision and carried strange technological devices integrated directly into their bodies. Then the survivors saw their faces. Human faces. Alien faces. Faces that had once belonged to living beings. Now transformed. Pale skin stretched across cybernetic implants. Mechanical eyes glowed with cold precision. Tubes, cables, and metallic components replaced flesh. Every movement was synchronized with impossible coordination. The drones advanced without fear. Without anger. Without hesitation. Blaster fire dropped several of them. The rest continued forward. They adapted. Personal energy fields emerged. Subsequent shots became ineffective. The survivors retreated through smoke-filled corridors illuminated by emergency lighting. The smell of burning circuitry mixed with scorched metal as the strange invaders steadily advanced deeper into the vessel. None of them spoke. Not until the final defensive position collapsed. Then every surviving crew member heard the same voice. Not through speakers. Not through communicators. Inside their minds. A voice composed of countless voices speaking simultaneously. Cold. Emotionless. Absolute. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. The transmission ended. The frigate disappeared from Republic tracking systems moments later. Thousands of light-years away, similar events unfolded across the frontier. Separatist listening posts vanished. Mining colonies ceased transmitting. Exploration vessels disappeared without explanation. The pattern accelerated. Fear spread faster than information. Within the Jedi Temple, concern deepened. Master Yoda sat in meditation surrounded by ancient architecture illuminated by soft evening light filtering through towering windows. Normally the Force flowed with familiar clarity. Even amidst war, its currents retained a recognizable rhythm. Now that rhythm felt disturbed. Something alien had entered the galaxy. Something disconnected from natural life. The sensation reminded him of machinery, yet it possessed purpose beyond simple technology. It was not the dark side. It was not Sith corruption. It felt different. A cold absence. A hunger. A collective will moving through the darkness. Elsewhere within the temple, other Jedi experienced similar disturbances. Visions became increasingly common. Some saw endless rows of pale figures standing beneath green skies. Others dreamed of entire worlds covered in metallic structures. Several Padawans reported hearing countless voices speaking as one. The council gathered to discuss the phenomenon. No clear answers emerged. Even the Force struggled to reveal the truth. On the opposite side of the galactic conflict, Count Dooku examined intelligence reports delivered by his agents. Entire Separatist assets had vanished without explanation. Initial assumptions regarding Republic involvement had been discarded. The evidence simply did not support such conclusions. Something else was responsible. Something powerful. Something unknown. The possibility intrigued him. Far beneath the surface of Coruscant, Darth Sidious reached a different conclusion. The Dark Lord sensed disturbance spreading through the galaxy. Entire regions seemed to be falling silent. Information disappeared. Life vanished. Yet, unlike ordinary destruction, this phenomenon produced strange echoes within the Force. Not death. Transformation. Sidious disliked mysteries he did not create. His attention turned toward the unknown regions. The future became clouded. For one of the few times in his carefully orchestrated rise to power, uncertainty entered his calculations. Meanwhile, beyond every frontier and every charted star system, the source of the disappearances continued its advance. Transwarp conduits opened across the darkness like wounds in reality itself. More vessels emerged. Not one cube. Not 10. Hundreds. Entire fleets moved through impossible corridors connecting distant points in space. Each arrival expanded the collective's reach. Each assimilation increased its knowledge. Republic databases became collective knowledge. Separatist navigation systems became collective knowledge. Military strategies, hyperspace routes, planetary defenses, communications protocols, industrial infrastructure, and biological records all flowed into the growing hive mind. The Borg were learning, adapting, preparing. Within the collective, a new subject dominated countless processing nodes. The Force. Millions of assimilated minds contained fragments of information regarding Jedi, Sith, and the mysterious energy field permeating the galaxy. The data remained incomplete, contradictory, difficult to quantify. That made it valuable. The collective desired understanding. Understanding would lead to adaptation. Adaptation would lead to perfection. And perfection demanded assimilation. Across the galaxy, citizens continued living their lives unaware of the approaching storm. Senators debated politics. Generals planned campaigns. Smugglers negotiated deals. Jedi fought battles. Separatists plotted victories. None understood what had entered their universe. None understood that a civilization unlike any they had ever encountered was already spreading through the darkness between stars. The Clone Wars had convinced the galaxy that it understood conflict. The Borg were about to teach it otherwise. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, make sure to like this video, share it with fellow Star Wars fans, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a future adventure. Beyond the frontier, another convoy vanished. Another listening post fell silent. Another world disappeared from the galactic conversation. And somewhere within the endless consciousness of the collective, billions of minds reached the same conclusion. This galaxy would be assimilated. The only remaining question was how much of it would survive the process. The disappearances could no longer be dismissed as isolated incidents. Across the outer rim and the frontier sectors bordering the unknown regions, fear spread faster than any military communique. Merchant guilds suspended operations along several trade corridors. Independent captains abandoned profitable routes rather than risk becoming the next unexplained casualty. Entire planetary governments demanded answers from the Republic Senate, while Separatist leaders accused the Republic of secretly deploying a new weapon capable of erasing fleets without leaving debris behind. Yet behind the political accusations and military speculation lurked a far more disturbing reality. No one understood what was happening. No one knew what had entered the galaxy. On Coruscant, emergency intelligence briefings became a daily occurrence. Republic analysts worked around the clock attempting to identify patterns among the growing number of disappearances. Every available data stream was examined. Hyperspace traffic logs were scrutinized. Sensor records from remote outposts were reviewed repeatedly. The conclusions remained troublingly incomplete. Ships vanished. Colonies went silent. Listening stations ceased all communication. The few fragments recovered from damaged relay satellites suggested the presence of unidentified vessels operating far beyond known Republic technology. Worse still, every encounter seemed to end the same way. Total silence. The Jedi Council found little comfort in the reports. The Force continued to ripple with unfamiliar disturbances. Jedi stationed throughout the galaxy reported strange sensations during meditation. Some described hearing countless voices speaking as one. Others experienced visions of metallic worlds stretching endlessly across black skies. Master Yoda sensed a growing pressure gathering beyond the frontier, a presence unlike any Sith threat he had encountered during centuries of service. It was not driven by anger. It was not fueled by hatred. It felt cold, methodical, unstoppable. Meanwhile, far from Coruscant's gleaming towers, a Republic task force emerged from hyperspace near the Carthan expanse. The formation consisted of 3 Acclamator-class assault ships escorted by a dozen smaller frigates and corvettes. Their mission appeared straightforward. Multiple merchant vessels had vanished in the region over the previous week. The Republic intended to locate the cause and restore security to the hyperspace routes. Thousands of clone troopers stood ready aboard the assault ships while experienced naval officers coordinated sensor sweeps across the surrounding star systems. The vast emptiness ahead appeared peaceful at first glance. Stars glittered against an endless ocean of darkness. No hostile fleets appeared on scanners. No Separatist vessels lurked within weapons range. The task force advanced cautiously, maintaining formation as long-range sensors probed deeper into the surrounding space. Then the readings appeared. At first, operators believed their equipment had malfunctioned. Massive contacts emerged from the darkness. Dozens of them. The objects possessed impossible dimensions. Their geometric shapes confused targeting computers. Power signatures fluctuated beyond anything recorded in Republic databases. Communication attempts produced only static. The task force commander immediately ordered combat readiness. Moments later, the stars themselves seemed to distort. Green light flashed across the darkness. Transwarp apertures opened. Gigantic cubes materialized from impossible corridors in space. The bridge crews stared in disbelief. No hyperspace signatures preceded their arrival. No warning indicators had detected their approach. The vessels simply appeared. Each cube dwarfed the largest Republic warships. Vast metallic surfaces stretched across kilometers of space while countless illuminated structures covered their exteriors like technological parasites. Green energy pulsed beneath armored hulls thicker than fortress walls. The cubes advanced silently, showing no signs of hesitation or uncertainty. The Republic task force opened fire. Turbolasers erupted from every vessel simultaneously. Brilliant crimson energy crossed the void and slammed into the advancing cubes. The bombardment possessed enough destructive power to cripple entire Separatist fleets. Against the mysterious newcomers, it achieved almost nothing. Green energy fields shimmered across the cubes. The incoming fire dissipated harmlessly. No visible damage appeared. The Republic crews watched in growing horror as their most powerful weapons failed completely. Then the cubes responded. Emerald beams lanced across the darkness. One Acclamator's shields collapsed instantly. The second vessel lost propulsion. The third suffered catastrophic reactor failure as green energy tore through multiple decks. Within minutes, the Republic formation ceased functioning as an organized military force. Ships drifted helplessly. Communications collapsed. Emergency alarms echoed through burning corridors. And then the boarding operations began. Throughout the damaged vessels, transport signatures appeared without warning. Strange figures materialized inside hangars, engineering sections, command centers, and troop barracks. Clone troopers rushed to defensive positions while officers struggled to coordinate resistance amid widespread system failures. The invaders advanced through smoke-filled corridors with terrifying precision. They looked partially organic, partially mechanical. Their pale flesh had been fused with machinery. Metallic implants protruded from skulls and limbs. Mechanical eyes glowed beneath expressionless faces. Tubes and cables connected directly into cybernetic components embedded throughout their bodies. The clone troopers reacted immediately. Blaster fire filled the corridors. Several drones fell. The remaining invaders continued advancing. Then something changed. Personal energy fields emerged around them. The next volley of blaster fire proved significantly less effective. The drones had adapted. Clone commanders attempted tactical withdrawals. Defensive choke points were established. Heavy weapons teams deployed repeating blasters capable of shredding battle droids. For a short time, the Republic forces slowed the invasion. Then the assimilation began. Troopers witnessed fallen comrades rise from the battlefield after being injected with microscopic machines. Black veins spread beneath their skin. Cybernetic growths emerged rapidly across their bodies. Eyes lost all traces of individuality. Voices merged into something collective. The transformed clones turned against their former brothers. Panic spread. Veteran soldiers who had faced impossible odds against droid armies suddenly found themselves confronting something far worse. An enemy that could turn casualties into reinforcements. An enemy that grew stronger with every victory. Within 4 hours, the entire Republic task force disappeared from military tracking networks. Only one badly damaged corvette escaped. Its crew consisted of fewer than 20 survivors. Their testimony would soon terrify the Republic. Elsewhere, a similar disaster unfolded within Separatist territory. The remote outpost on Vornek Station existed primarily as a logistics center supporting nearby Separatist operations. Thousands of battle droids maintained cargo shipments while organic supervisors coordinated supply movements between local fleets. The station occupied a strategically insignificant region of space. It possessed minimal defenses because no major threat had ever emerged nearby. The Borg selected it deliberately. When the first cube appeared, station commanders assumed a Republic attack had begun. They were wrong. The cube ignored conventional military objectives. It targeted the station itself. Energy beams crippled communications arrays and power systems before defensive batteries could fully respond. Droid armies mobilized throughout the facility. Hundreds of vulture droids launched into space while ground forces prepared to repel boarders. For a brief period, the battle seemed more favorable than the Republic encounter. Battle droids proved resistant to assimilation. Nanoprobes could not easily transform purely mechanical units. The Borg quickly adapted. Instead of assimilating the droids, they absorbed their operating systems. Entire command networks fell under collective control. Security systems turned against their operators. Automated defenses began firing on Separatist personnel. Doors sealed unexpectedly. Life support systems malfunctioned. The station descended into chaos. Organic administrators attempted evacuation. Most never reached their transports. The Borg systematically captured engineers, scientists, technicians, and military specialists. Every prisoner represented new information. Every assimilated mind expanded the collective's understanding of the galaxy. Within hours, Vornek Station ceased to exist as a functioning Separatist facility. A handful of survivors escaped aboard emergency shuttles. Their reports spread rapidly through Separatist intelligence channels. Descriptions from Republic and Separatist survivors matched perfectly. Cube-shaped vessels. Cybernetic invaders. Assimilation. Adaptation. Collective consciousness. For the first time since the Clone Wars began, both governments received independent reports describing the exact same enemy. The implications were horrifying. Count Dooku reviewed the testimony personally. The recordings disturbed even him. Veteran officers described comrades transformed into obedient drones within minutes. Scientists recounted witnessing cybernetic growth spreading across living tissue at impossible speeds. Engineers reported enemy vessels adapting to weapons almost immediately after being struck. Dooku recognized the danger instantly. These newcomers represented far more than another military threat. They represented a civilization capable of absorbing entire civilizations. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council reached a similar conclusion. Survivor testimonies were brought before the assembled Masters. Holographic recordings displayed grainy images of drones advancing through burning corridors. Distorted combat footage revealed strange cybernetic figures resisting overwhelming firepower. Audio logs captured the chilling message repeatedly reported by every survivor. Resistance is futile. The phrase lingered within the council chambers long after the recordings ended. For perhaps the first time since the war began, the Republic faced an enemy that neither diplomacy nor conventional military strength seemed capable of stopping. Yet the greatest concern emerged from a detail hidden within the reports. Several survivors claimed the drones had attempted to capture Force-sensitive individuals alive. Not kill them, capture them. The realization troubled the Council deeply. The Borg were not simply conquering. They were learning. Somewhere beyond the frontier, within the vast interconnected consciousness of the collective, billions of minds processed newly acquired knowledge. Republic tactics were analyzed. Separatist technologies were catalogued. Biological data accumulated. Strategic projections expanded continuously. Among the countless streams of information, one subject occupied increasing attention: the Force. Every assimilated database contained references to it. Every military archive mentioned Jedi. Every political record acknowledged their influence. The phenomenon remained poorly understood. Therefore, it demanded investigation. The Borg had discovered a galaxy defined by conflict. Now they intended to understand the power that shaped it. And as Republic and Separatist leaders finally began realizing the true scale of the threat facing them, more cubes continued emerging from transwarp conduits hidden within the darkness beyond known space. The first assimilations had only been the beginning. Entire sectors would soon learn what happened when a civilization dedicated to perfection encountered a galaxy already weakened by endless war. The first assimilation reports shattered many assumptions across the galaxy. For generations, the Republic and the Jedi Order had confronted countless threats, from separatist war machines to Sith conspiracies hidden in the shadows. Every enemy eventually revealed a weakness. Every challenge could be studied, understood, and overcome through courage, wisdom, and the Force. The horrifying accounts emerging from the frontier seemed impossible, yet the evidence continued to grow. Republic crews vanished. Separatist facilities disappeared. Survivors described cybernetic monsters that transformed living beings into extensions of a single consciousness. Most disturbing of all, those survivors consistently reported that the invaders adapted to resistance with terrifying speed. The Jedi Council could no longer rely on second-hand reports. They needed answers. A task force was assembled within hours. The mission would not be led by military commanders or intelligence analysts. It would be led by Jedi. Master Plo Koon volunteered immediately. His calm judgment and extensive experience made him an ideal candidate for a mission filled with unknown dangers. Accompanying him were Jedi Master Kit Fisto, whose adaptability and battlefield instincts had saved countless lives during the Clone Wars, and a small contingent of Jedi Knights and Padawans selected for their investigative skills. Several clone companies accompanied the expedition aboard a Venator-class star destroyer supported by escort frigates and reconnaissance vessels. Officially, the mission existed to locate missing Republic assets. Unofficially, it represented the Republic's first serious attempt to understand the enemy now spreading through the Outer Rim. The fleet departed Coruscant under strict secrecy. As hyperspace stars stretched into brilliant rivers of light, unease lingered among the Jedi. The Force remained unusually turbulent. During meditation sessions, several members of the expedition reported fragmented visions. They saw endless green lights glowing in darkness. Metallic landscapes stretching beyond the horizon. Countless voices merging into a single overwhelming consciousness. None of the visions provided clear answers. Only warnings. Days later, the task force arrived near the Carthan Expanse, where the Republic formation had vanished. The region appeared quiet at first glance. Stars glittered peacefully across the void. No hostile vessels appeared on sensors. No battle debris floated through space. There was no evidence that an entire military force had been destroyed here. That absence itself felt wrong. A Republic task force comprising thousands of personnel could not simply disappear. Yet it had. Sensor teams immediately began scanning the surrounding systems while Jedi investigators studied the area through the Force. The silence disturbed them. Normally, battlefields retained echoes within the Force. Fear, pain, and death left impressions that sensitive minds could detect long after physical evidence vanished. Here, those impressions felt fragmented, distorted, almost consumed. Master Pilo Kun sensed lingering traces of suffering, but they seemed strangely incomplete, as though something had interrupted the natural cycle of life and death itself. Hours into the investigation, long-range scanners detected a signal. Artificial. Moving. The source emerged from behind a nearby moon. A small vessel drifted slowly through space, heavily damaged and barely functional. Republic markings covered its battered hull. It was one of the missing corvettes from the Vanish task force. Relief spread briefly across the fleet. At last, survivors. Medical teams prepared rescue operations while communication officers attempted contact. The damaged ship responded with static and fragmented transmissions. Life signs appeared aboard, though sensor readings fluctuated strangely. Master Kit Fisto felt immediate concern. Something was wrong. The Force whispered caution. Despite his warning, rescue teams proceeded carefully. The corvette's condition suggested severe combat damage. Its engines barely functioned. Power systems fluctuated unpredictably. Entire sections appeared dark and uninhabitable. A boarding party entered through the primary docking bay. Clone troopers advanced first. Jedi followed. Emergency lighting cast long shadows through silent corridors littered with debris. Scorch marks covered bulkheads. Damaged equipment lay scattered across the decks. At first glance, the vessel resembled countless warships damaged during the Clone Wars. Then the investigators noticed the modifications. Cables emerged from walls where none should exist. Strange metallic growths spread across machinery. Entire sections of the ship appeared transformed. Republic technology had been integrated with something else. Something alien. The deeper they advanced, the more extensive the changes became. Corridors seemed alive with machinery. Conduits pulsed beneath metallic surfaces. Green lights flickered rhythmically throughout the vessel. The atmosphere felt less like a damaged warship and more like the interior of a living organism. Master Plo Koon immediately ordered increased caution. The force surrounding the vessel felt profoundly unsettling. Not dark in the manner of the Sith. Not corrupted. Simply wrong. Then they found the survivors. At least, they initially believed they were survivors. Several figures stood motionless within a former troop compartment. Their clone armor remained recognizable despite extensive modifications. Cybernetic implants covered large portions of their bodies. Pale skin stretched around metallic components. Mechanical eyes glowed faintly beneath expressionless faces. The moment the boarding team entered, every figure turned simultaneously. The synchronized movement sent chills through the clones. No individual personality remained. No independent thought. Only unity. The drones advanced. The clone troopers opened fire instantly. Blaster bolts struck multiple targets. Several drones collapsed. The remainder continued forward without hesitation. Master Kit Fisto ignited his green lightsaber. The familiar hum echoed through the corridor. Other Jedi followed. Blue and green blades illuminated the darkness as the boarding team engaged. At first, the battle seemed straightforward. Lightsabers cut through drones with devastating efficiency. Limbs fell. Cybernetic components exploded. The Force allowed the Jedi to anticipate attacks and coordinate defenses effortlessly. Compared to battle droids, the cybernetic drones appeared slow and predictable. The Jedi advanced confidently. Then additional drones arrived. Dozens emerged from surrounding corridors. Their movements displayed increasing coordination. Their attacks became more precise. More importantly, they began adapting. One drone extended a device that emitted a strange energy field. A lightsaber struck it. The blade flickered unexpectedly. Not disabled. Disrupted. Momentarily destabilized. The Jedi exchanged surprised glances. They had never encountered technology capable of interacting with lightsabers in such a manner. The disruption lasted only seconds. But seconds mattered. A clone trooper died during that brief opening. The engagement intensified. Master Plo Koon unleashed Force lightning against an advancing group of drones. Brilliant energy surged through the corridor, destroying multiple targets instantly. The attack proved devastating. For approximately 30 seconds. Then new drones entered the battle carrying modified shielding systems. The next Force lightning strike achieved significantly reduced results. The Borg had adapted. The realization struck every Jedi simultaneously. This enemy did not merely endure attacks. It learned from them. Rapidly. Dangerously. The boarding team pushed deeper into the vessel, seeking answers. Resistance increased with every deck. The drones seemed less interested in defeating the Jedi than studying them. Sensor equipment integrated into their bodies continuously analyzed lightsabers, Force abilities, combat techniques, and biological characteristics. The Borg were gathering data. The Jedi represented something entirely new. Therefore they were valuable. As the investigators reached the command deck, the truth became horrifyingly clear. The corvette had not escaped. It had been transformed into a trap. Its purpose was never survival. Its purpose was observation. The bridge no longer resembled a Republic command center. Borg technology covered every surface. Massive conduits connected directly into assimilated crew members who stood motionless throughout the chamber. Hundreds of green lights pulsed across walls that seemed partially organic and partially mechanical. At the center stood a figure unlike the others. A former Republic officer heavily modified with advanced cybernetics. Its eyes focused directly on the Jedi. Then the voice returned. Not through speakers. Not through translators. Directly into their minds. Thousands of voices speaking as one. You are unique. You will be studied. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. The clones immediately recognized the phrase from survivor testimonies. The Jedi felt something else. A pressure. A collective consciousness unlike anything they had encountered before. The Force connected living beings through countless individual perspectives. The Borg Collective erased individuality entirely. It represented unity without freedom. Order without choice. Life stripped of identity. The philosophical contradiction disturbed the Jedi almost as much as the physical threat. Master Kit Fisto attempted communication through the Force, seeking understanding. For a brief moment, his consciousness brushed against the collective. The experience nearly overwhelmed him. Countless minds. Countless memories. Countless voices. An ocean of consciousness stretching beyond comprehension. There was no hatred. No anger. No cruelty. Only purpose. Assimilation. Perfection. Expansion. The sheer scale of the collective shocked him. This was not an army. It was a civilization functioning as a single organism. The connection lasted only seconds before he severed it, but the encounter left him shaken. Meanwhile, the Borg continued adapting. Several drones now carried shielding systems specifically designed to counter lightsaber strikes. Others employed frequency modulation techniques that reduced the effectiveness of blaster fire. Tactical responses evolved continuously throughout the engagement. For the first time, the Jedi confronted an enemy actively learning from every attack. Victory would not come through simple superiority. Every success generated new resistance. Every technique became less effective over time. The battle escalated rapidly. Clone casualties mounted. Drone reinforcements flooded the corridors. Master Plo Koon finally ordered withdrawal. The objective had changed. Understanding the enemy now outweighed destroying the vessel. The boarding force fought its way back toward the hangar while pursued by relentless waves of drones. Lightsabers flashed through darkness. Blaster fire illuminated smoke-filled passageways. Explosions rocked the increasingly unstable corvette. Yet even during retreat, the Borg continued observing, continued learning, continued adapting. The surviving Jedi escaped moments before the vessel self-destructed in a brilliant green explosion that illuminated the surrounding void. Back aboard the Venator, emergency meetings began immediately. The investigation had produced critical discoveries. Lightsabers remained effective, but not permanently. The Force remained powerful, but not unbeatable. Most importantly, the Borg could adapt to both. That single revelation changed everything. The Republic had assumed the Jedi represented its ultimate advantage. Now they faced an enemy capable of studying, countering, and eventually overcoming even the galaxy's greatest defenders. As reports traveled toward Coruscant, concerns spread through both military and Jedi leadership. The Borg were no longer a mysterious frontier threat. They were an evolving danger. A danger actively learning how to fight Jedi. And somewhere beyond the frontier, within countless interconnected minds spanning hundreds of vessels, the collective processed newly acquired information regarding lightsabers, force sensitivity, Jedi tactics, and biological potential. The Borg had encountered the Jedi Order. The analysis had begun. And the next encounter would be far more dangerous for everyone involved. The Jedi investigation changed the course of the war against the Borg before most of the galaxy even realized a new war had begun. Reports arriving on Coruscant painted a picture that disturbed every member of the Jedi Council. The Borg were not merely invaders. They were students. Every encounter made them stronger. Every battle improved their understanding. Every assimilated victim became another source of information feeding an intelligence unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. The Sith sought power through secrecy and manipulation. The Separatists relied upon numbers and industry. The Republic depended on military strength and the Jedi Order. The Borg cared about none of those philosophies. They sought knowledge itself. Every civilization existed only as raw material waiting to be absorbed into something larger. Far beyond the borders of explored space, hidden within regions where navigation charts became unreliable and entire stars remained unnamed, the collective expanded with relentless efficiency. New cubes emerged from transwarp corridors every week. Vast industrial complexes grew across captured asteroids and abandoned systems. Assimilated vessels disappeared into immense construction facilities before emerging transformed, carrying technologies drawn from countless civilizations now incorporated into the collective. The Star Wars galaxy represented the most complex and technologically advanced civilization the Borg had encountered since their arrival in this universe. Naturally, they intended to understand every aspect of it. Within enormous processing chambers spanning entire decks of a cube, trillions of calculations unfolded simultaneously. Assimilated Republic officers contributed military doctrine. Separatist strategists provided tactical analysis. Engineers from both sides offered technical knowledge regarding hyperspace travel, shield systems, communications technology, and planetary infrastructure. Every captured droid added its own database to the growing ocean of information. The results appeared almost immediately. The first adaptation involved hyperspace. Initially, Borg vessels relied exclusively on transwarp technology carried from their own universe. While powerful, it possessed limitations within the vast geography of the Star Wars galaxy. Hyperlanes offered access to regions that local civilizations had spent millennia mapping and refining. Therefore, the Borg studied them. Every navigational database acquired through assimilation became part of a larger puzzle. Captured astromechs surrendered countless hyperspace routes. Republic naval records revealed strategic corridors. Separatist archives exposed hidden supply lines. Within weeks, Borg vessels began demonstrating an alarming understanding of local navigation. Entire fleets appeared along routes that should have remained secret. Remote military installations discovered enemy vessels arriving from impossible directions. The collective was learning how the galaxy moved, and that knowledge made them significantly more dangerous. Meanwhile, across numerous assimilated facilities, another field of study captured increasing attention: droids. The Borg found them fascinating. Unlike the artificial intelligences common within their own universe, Star Wars droids possessed remarkably sophisticated personalities and adaptive behavioral programming. Protocol droids displayed emotional characteristics. Astromechs demonstrated creativity. Tactical droids developed unique strategic preferences. Some even exhibited loyalty, humor, stubbornness, and independent judgment. To the collective, such traits represented both an opportunity and a mystery. Assimilated droid networks revealed millions of examples. Every personality matrix was analyzed. every behavioral pattern catalogued. The Borg quickly discovered methods of integrating droid processing architecture into their own systems. Soon, cubes began incorporating modified tactical algorithms derived from Separatist command units. Predictive combat models improved dramatically. Response times accelerated. Adaptation cycles shortened. The Borg were no longer simply learning Star Wars technology. They were improving themselves with it. Throughout the Outer Rim, military commanders noticed subtle but alarming changes. Enemy vessels coordinated attacks more effectively. Boarding operations became increasingly sophisticated. Weaknesses that had existed during early encounters vanished rapidly. The Borg were evolving, and evolution favored them. Yet technology represented only part of what interested the collective. A far greater mystery had emerged: the Force. Every database referenced it. Every major government acknowledged it. Every military archive contained reports involving Jedi intervention. The concept challenged Borg understanding. The collective possessed extensive knowledge regarding physics, biology, engineering, and countless scientific disciplines. Yet the Force appeared to transcend conventional classification. It influenced probability. It enabled telekinesis. It granted precognitive abilities. It connected living beings through means that defied established scientific principles. The phenomenon should not exist, and therefore it demanded investigation. Assimilated scientists became the foundation of that investigation. Republic researchers contributed centuries of biological studies regarding midichlorians. Separatist laboratories offered experimental data gathered from Force-sensitive subjects. Criminal organizations unknowingly supplied information acquired through black market transactions involving Jedi artifacts and ancient holocrons. The collective absorbed everything. Patterns emerged. Correlations appeared. The Borg began constructing theoretical models. At first, they viewed the Force as merely another energy field awaiting explanation. That assumption proved inadequate. The deeper their analysis progressed, the more unusual the phenomenon appeared. Force sensitivity could not be reliably replicated through technology. Its effects varied between individuals. Its influence extended beyond measurable energy interactions. Most confusing of all, it seemed partially dependent upon consciousness itself. For an intelligence obsessed with order and predictability, the Force represented a fascinating contradiction. The galaxy's greatest power source refused to behave according to conventional logic. Naturally, the collective sought direct observation. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. A Republic research station located near the Mid-Rim specialized in studying Force-related artifacts recovered from archaeological expeditions. The facility possessed minimal defenses because its work rarely attracted military attention. Scientists examined ancient relics while historians translated fragments of forgotten languages. The station never anticipated becoming a target. A single cube emerged from transwarp directly above the facility. Within minutes, communications ceased. Security personnel mounted resistance. It proved futile. Borg drones flooded the station with overwhelming efficiency. Researchers were captured alive whenever possible. Laboratories fell intact. Archives were seized before destruction protocols could activate. Among the recovered materials lay dozens of artifacts linked to ancient Jedi and Sith civilizations. Kyber crystal fragments, holocron components, ancient manuscripts, Force-sensitive relics spanning thousands of years. The Borg assimilated them all. Not because they understood their significance, because they wished to. Elsewhere, another development concerned the Jedi Council. Reports from recent encounters suggested the Borg were displaying increasing awareness of Force users. Drones adapted more rapidly during battles involving Jedi. Targeting priorities shifted toward Force-sensitive opponents. Captured communications referenced unusual biological distinctions among certain individuals. The pattern disturbed Master Yoda greatly. The Borg were not simply fighting Jedi. They were studying them, and every lesson brought them closer to understanding something that perhaps should never be understood by an intelligence like the collective. The concern intensified when a new report arrived from the frontier. A small Jedi enclave on a remote world had vanished. Not destroyed. Vanished. Investigators arriving at the site discovered evidence of Borg activity but relatively little violence. Structures remained intact. Equipment remained functional. Yet every inhabitant had disappeared. The implications were deeply troubling. Had Force-sensitive individuals been assimilated? The possibility seemed almost impossible. Yet the Borg had accomplished countless impossible things already. Within the collective, the answer remained uncertain. Several Force-sensitive beings had indeed been captured. The assimilation process functioned. Partially. Their biological traits remained intact. Their connection to the Force did not disappear. Instead, something unexpected occurred. The collective gained access to fragmented perceptions unlike anything it had previously experienced. Brief flashes of precognition. Enhanced environmental awareness. Subtle perceptions extending beyond ordinary sensory input. The results fascinated the Borg. Not because they granted immediate superiority. Because they revealed entirely new avenues of exploration. The Force remained elusive, but no longer completely inaccessible. For the first time, the collective glimpsed a phenomenon existing beyond pure technological understanding. And rather than rejecting it, the Borg adapted. Throughout countless cubes, new research initiatives emerged. Assimilated scientists investigated midichlorian biology. Captured data regarding Jedi training underwent analysis. Ancient Force traditions were compared against collective experiences. The Borg approached the mystery exactly as they approached every challenge. Through relentless observation, relentless experimentation, relentless adaptation. Meanwhile, across the Republic and Separatist territories, military strategists struggled to comprehend how quickly the threat was evolving. Every victory seemed temporary. Every successful tactic lost effectiveness after repeated use. The enemy appearing today possessed capabilities absent only weeks earlier. Fear spread steadily through both governments. Even Count Dooku found himself increasingly frustrated. The Separatist leader had spent years manipulating galactic conflict according to carefully designed strategies. The Borg ignored strategy as most beings understood it. They advanced with mechanical certainty. They sought no negotiations. Desired no territory in the traditional sense. Required no political victories. They simply absorbed. Planet by planet. Fleet by fleet. Mind by mind. On Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine monitored every development carefully. Unlike many leaders, he recognized opportunity hidden within crisis. The Borg threatened his plans, certainly. Yet they also created conditions useful for future ambitions. Fear united populations. Desperation encouraged extraordinary measures. A sufficiently terrifying enemy could reshape entire civilizations. Still, even Palpatine exercised caution. The Sith Lord sensed something unsettling regarding the collective. Unlike ordinary opponents, they seemed largely immune to manipulation. They possessed no greed, no ambition, no jealousy, no fear. The traditional weaknesses exploited by the Sith barely existed within them. For perhaps the first time in decades, Darth Sidious faced an adversary he could not easily control. Far beyond the core worlds, the Borg continued their studies. Every assimilation strengthened them. Every encounter expanded their understanding. Every captured mind revealed new possibilities. The Star Wars galaxy possessed technologies unknown to the collective. It possessed philosophies unlike any they had encountered. Most importantly, it possessed the Force. A mystery older than governments. Older than civilizations. Older than recorded history itself. And now the collective had become fascinated. The Borg had arrived seeking conquest. They were becoming something even more dangerous. Students of the galaxy they intended to assimilate. As thousands of greenlit chambers hummed with endless calculations, one conclusion spread across countless interconnected minds. Technology could be absorbed. Knowledge could be acquired. Civilizations could be assimilated. But the Force remained unfinished. Unresolved. A puzzle waiting to be solved. And somewhere deep within the vast consciousness of the collective, an objective began taking shape that would soon terrify Jedi, Sith, Republic and Separatist alike. The Borg no longer wished merely to conquer the galaxy. They wanted to understand the power that bound it together. The Borg had entered the galaxy as an unknown threat lurking beyond the frontier. Within months, they had become something far worse. Entire sectors now lived under the shadow of possible assimilation. Trade routes vanished overnight. Colonies fortified themselves behind planetary shields. Republic and Separatist fleets redirected resources away from the Clone Wars to contain a danger neither side fully understood. Yet the most significant battles were not occurring among the stars. They were unfolding within the minds of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. The Borg continued expanding. The Collective continued learning. And every major power now faced the same question. Could the Borg be stopped? More dangerously, could they be controlled? On Coruscant, the Jedi Council gathered beneath the towering spires of the temple while storms rolled across the cityscape outside. The Clone Wars had already pushed the Order into unfamiliar territory. Jedi Knights served as generals. Ancient traditions bent beneath the necessities of galactic conflict. Now a threat had emerged unlike any enemy in recorded history. Master Yoda sat in silence as reports filled the chamber. Entire worlds lost. Additional Force-sensitive disappearances. Growing evidence that the Collective was studying both Jedi biology and Force-related phenomena. The implications weighed heavily upon every council member. For centuries, the Jedi had confronted enemies motivated by fear, anger, greed, or ambition. The Borg represented none of those things. Their purpose resembled neither the light side nor the dark side. They sought perfection through assimilation, reducing every unique life form into a component within a greater whole. The philosophy horrified the Jedi. Yet several council members recognized another danger. The Borg were becoming increasingly interested in the Force. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi argued that immediate action was necessary. Every encounter demonstrated the Collective's capacity for adaptation. Waiting would only strengthen them further. Master Mace Windu largely agreed. The Republic needed to identify and destroy major Borg concentrations before they achieved irreversible advantages. Others were less certain. Master Jocasta knew and several senior scholars believed knowledge remained incomplete. The Jedi still understood very little regarding Borg technology, collective consciousness, or assimilation mechanisms. Launching major offensives without sufficient intelligence risked catastrophe. Thus the Council found itself divided. Destroy the Borg, study the Borg, or somehow accomplish both simultaneously. The debate remained unresolved because every option carried enormous risks. Far below the temple, another meeting unfolded beneath the Senate district. Unlike the Jedi Council, Count Dooku viewed the Collective through a different lens entirely. The Separatist leader stood within a secure command facility reviewing reports from dozens of assimilated systems. Holographic projections floated before him, displaying sectors where Borg influence expanded steadily outward. To most observers, the data represented disaster. To Dooku, it represented possibility. He understood the danger posed by the Collective better than most Republic leaders. Yet he also recognized opportunities hidden within their methods. The Borg possessed technologies capable of adapting to enemy weapons. Their collective intelligence coordinated actions across vast distances with extraordinary efficiency. Their assimilation process converted enemies into assets. The military implications were staggering. If those technologies could be acquired, modified, and controlled, they could transform the Clone Wars overnight. Entire Republic sectors could collapse. Jedi resistance could be neutralized. Victory might become inevitable. Of course, controlling the Borg themselves remained impossible. Dooku understood that immediately. But understanding their technology? Replicating portions of it? That seemed achievable. Secret research initiatives began almost at once. Captured drone components recovered from previous battles were transported to hidden Separatist laboratories. Teams of engineers, cybernetic specialists, and tactical analysts examined every fragment. They sought answers regarding adaptive shielding, neural networking, and collective processing systems. Progress proved slow. The Borg technology appeared extraordinarily sophisticated. Yet every small breakthrough encouraged further experimentation. Dooku's strategy remained simple. Learn from the Borg. Take what was useful. Destroy them before they became unstoppable. The approach carried tremendous risks. Unfortunately, those risks appeared acceptable compared to the alternative. Elsewhere on Coruscant, Darth Sidious considered an entirely different path. Inside the hidden chambers beneath the Republic capital, the Dark Lord studied intelligence reports gathered from across the galaxy. Every disappearance, every assimilation, every military encounter. Unlike Dooku, Sidious focused less on technology and more on potential. The Borg represented one of the greatest threats his plans had ever encountered. They disrupted carefully orchestrated conflicts. They consumed populations he intended to rule. Their expansion introduced uncertainty into a future he had spent decades shaping. Ordinarily, such a threat would demand elimination. Yet Sidious remained fascinated. The collective possessed something unique. Unity, absolute obedience, perfect coordination. The Sith spent generations manipulating individuals through fear, desire, and ambition. The Borg eliminated individuality entirely. The philosophical implications intrigued him. What if a collective consciousness could be influenced? What if a central vulnerability existed? What if the immense resources of the Borg could somehow be directed toward Sith objectives? The possibilities were extraordinary. Dangerous, but extraordinary. Thus Sidious pursued a strategy neither the Jedi nor Dooku suspected. He ordered secret investigations into the nature of the collective itself. Not its vessels. Not its weapons. Its consciousness. Sith scholars began examining ancient records describing hive minds, telepathic networks, and force-linked civilizations. Inquisitive agents searched forgotten archives for references to collective intelligence structures. Dark side researchers explored theoretical methods through which a sufficiently powerful Force user might influence interconnected minds. The odds appeared remote. Yet Sidious never dismissed possibilities, especially when those possibilities involved power. Across the galaxy, multiple games unfolded simultaneously. The Jedi sought understanding. Dooku sought technological advantage. Sidious sought control. Meanwhile, the Borg continued growing stronger. Unaware of these competing schemes, or perhaps aware and unconcerned, the collective expanded deeper into contested regions. New assimilations occurred almost daily. Entire communications networks vanished. Strategic resources disappeared. Military installations fell silent. The Clone Wars itself began changing. Republic commanders increasingly prioritized anti-Borg operations over offensives against Separatist targets. Separatist fleets withdrew from planned campaigns to defend vulnerable sectors. Some regions experienced temporary reductions in hostilities simply because both sides feared exposing themselves to assimilation. The Borg were reshaping the war without intentionally participating in it. Their existence altered every strategic calculation, every political decision, every military deployment. The shadow they cast stretched across the entire galaxy. Yet the greatest concern remained the Force. Reports continued accumulating regarding Borg interest in Force-sensitive individuals. Captured Jedi artifacts surfaced within assimilated territories. Several recovered transmissions referenced biological anomalies linked to midichlorian concentrations. The pattern became impossible to ignore. The collective was studying the Force more aggressively than ever. Master Yoda sensed the danger before most others. During meditation, he experienced increasingly disturbing visions. Endless mechanical worlds. Green storms consuming stars. Countless voices merging into one impossible consciousness. Most troubling of all were fleeting images suggesting Force-sensitive drones moving among the collective. The visions lacked clarity. Yet they felt significant. The future darkened around them. For the first time since the Borg arrived, Yoda considered a possibility he deeply disliked. Perhaps knowledge itself represented the greatest threat. Every civilization feared the Borg because of what they assimilated. What would happen if they truly understood the Force? The answer remained unknown. That uncertainty terrified him. Meanwhile, within the collective, billions of minds processed unimaginable quantities of information. Republic military doctrine. Separatist engineering techniques. Galactic economic structures. Force-related research. All of it flowed into the endless ocean of shared consciousness. The Borg had begun noticing unusual patterns. Certain individuals repeatedly influenced events beyond statistical probability. Jedi survived situations that should have killed them. Sith manipulated outcomes through mechanisms not fully explained by conventional science. Force-sensitive beings demonstrated abilities inconsistent with known biological limitations. The phenomenon persisted. Therefore, it required further investigation. Assimilated researchers proposed thousands of theories. Millions of simulations were conducted. None produced complete answers. The mystery remained unresolved. And unresolved mysteries demanded attention. Throughout vast processing nodes buried deep within countless cubes, resources shifted toward force-related studies. Specialized assimilation teams received new directives. Target priorities changed. Intelligence gathering operations expanded. The collective had become curious. Curiosity, when combined with Borg persistence, often became dangerous. Back on Coruscant, neither the Jedi Council nor the Sith fully appreciated how rapidly events were accelerating. Their competing strategies continued developing independently. Secret missions launched. Research projects expanded. Hidden agendas multiplied. Each faction believed it possessed a path toward managing the Borg threat. Each faction believed it could stay ahead of the collective's growth. Each faction underestimated just how quickly the Borg learned. The shadows of corruption spread not because anyone had fallen to darkness, but because fear had begun influencing decisions. The Jedi risked compromising principles in pursuit of understanding. Dooku risked unleashing technologies he barely comprehended. Sidious risked meddling with a consciousness unlike anything the Sith had ever encountered. All three paths led toward uncertainty. All three paths carried consequences. And beyond the frontier, illuminated by endless green lights and guided by a collective will spanning billions of minds, the Borg continued moving toward the heart of the galaxy. They did not fear the Jedi. They did not fear the Sith. They did not fear the Republic or the Separatists. They simply continued adapting, continued learning, continued expanding. And with every passing day, the moment approached when knowledge would no longer be enough to stop them. The Clone Wars had transformed the galaxy into a landscape of shifting alliances, broken loyalties, and endless conflict long before the Borg arrived. Entire generations had grown accustomed to uncertainty. Worlds changed hands between Republic and Separatist control. Trade routes became battlefields. Neutral systems learned to survive by adapting to circumstances beyond their control. Yet despite the chaos of war, there remained regions that existed beyond the authority of either government. Criminal syndicates controlled vast smuggling empires. Mandalorian clans pursued their own destinies among the stars. Independent worlds defended their sovereignty against all outside influence. These factions had survived because they understood how to navigate instability. They believed they could survive the Borg as well. They were wrong. The Borg had spent months learning the structure of the galaxy. They understood military doctrines. They understood hyperspace routes. They understood planetary defenses and industrial networks. Most importantly, they understood something that neither the Republic nor the Separatists fully appreciated. The frontier was no longer enough. Assimilating isolated outposts and military formations provided valuable information, but true expansion required infrastructure. It required manufacturing. It required resources on a scale capable of sustaining continuous growth. The collective had reached a new phase. They had begun building. Deep within conquered systems beyond the outer rim, entire worlds changed beneath the influence of Borg technology. Asteroid belts vanished as automated harvesting operations consumed them for raw materials. Planetary surfaces became industrial landscapes illuminated by endless green light. Gigantic construction complexes stretched across continents. Assimilated workers labored without rest while automated fabrication systems operated continuously. The results soon became visible. Long-range Republic reconnaissance probes captured disturbing images from deep space. Massive shipyards surrounded Borg-controlled worlds. Assembly structures larger than cities floated above planetary surfaces. Hundreds of vessels occupied construction berths simultaneously. The Collective was no longer relying solely on ships brought from their own universe. They were manufacturing new fleets. The implications sent shockwaves through military leadership across the galaxy. Every previous strategy assumed Borg numbers remained limited. That assumption was now obsolete. Meanwhile, far from the concerns of Coruscant and Separatist command centers, the criminal underworld encountered the Borg in its own way. The Black Sun Syndicate first noticed unusual disruptions along profitable smuggling corridors. Entire shipments vanished without explanation. Pirate groups disappeared while raiding supposedly vulnerable convoys. Independent criminal organizations stopped responding to communications. Initially, most syndicate leaders assumed competitors were responsible. Such assumptions lasted until survivors began arriving. One smuggler reached Enarshada aboard a heavily damaged freighter after witnessing the destruction of an entire pirate fleet. His testimony spread rapidly through the moon's criminal networks. He described cube-shaped vessels emerging from nowhere. He described crews transformed into cybernetic slaves. He described entire ships being absorbed rather than destroyed. Most listeners dismissed the account as the ramblings of a traumatized spacer. Then additional survivors arrived. Then more. Soon the underworld faced the same horrifying realization already spreading through the Republic and Separatist territories. Something new had entered the galaxy. Something worse than any criminal empire. Something that could not be bribed, negotiated with, or intimidated. The Borg offered no deals. The Borg desired no profit. The Borg simply assimilated. Crime lords who had survived decades of galactic conflict suddenly found themselves confronting a threat beyond their experience. Among those paying close attention was Cad Bane. The notorious bounty hunter had built his reputation by surviving situations that killed lesser beings. He trusted very little and feared even less. Yet reports concerning the Borg captured his interest immediately. Not because he wished to fight them. Because clients would inevitably pay extraordinary sums to learn more about them. Credits followed opportunity. And opportunities rarely became larger than a mysterious civilization consuming entire sectors. Bane accepted contracts gathering intelligence from regions recently affected by Borg activity. His investigations revealed troubling patterns. Every encounter strengthened the Collective. Every battle improved their tactics. Every assimilation increased their resources. More importantly, they were beginning to move beyond isolated frontier systems. Their reach was expanding toward populated regions, toward valuable worlds, toward the heart of the galaxy. At nearly the same time, Mandalorian space experienced its first major encounter with the Collective. The Mandalorians differed from most galactic powers. They respected strength above all else. Their culture had survived countless wars because they adapted without surrendering their identity. Even during the Clone Wars, many clans maintained independence from both the Republic and Separatists. When reports regarding the Borg arrived, Mandalorian leaders responded with skepticism. The galaxy always produced new threats. Most eventually died. The Borg appeared unlikely to be different. That confidence lasted until a patrol fleet vanished near the edge of Mandalorian territory. Unlike Republic or Separatist commanders, the Mandalorians responded aggressively. A second force launched immediately. Its objective was simple: find the enemy, destroy it. The resulting battle would become infamous throughout nearby sectors. The Mandalorian fleet encountered 3 Borg cubes advancing through a sparsely populated system. Rather than retreat, the warriors attacked immediately. Missile barrages filled space. Heavy cannons unleashed devastating firepower. Fighter squadrons executed aggressive assault runs that would have intimidated most opponents. For a short time, their tactics appeared successful. Several external structures on the cubes sustained visible damage. The Borg adapted. Energy frequencies shifted. Defensive systems recalibrated. Weapons that had proven effective moments earlier lost much of their impact. The battle changed rapidly. Yet something unexpected occurred. Mandalorians adapted as well. Their decentralized command structures allowed unusual flexibility. Individual pilots altered attack patterns constantly. Small units improvised new tactics without waiting for authorization. Warrior instincts compensated for situations where conventional military doctrine failed. The engagement became one of the most difficult battles the Borg had experienced since entering the galaxy. The collective ultimately prevailed. But victory required significantly greater effort than anticipated. Several Borg vessels suffered measurable damage. Numerous drones were destroyed. Most importantly, the Borg learned an important lesson. Mandalorians could not be approached like conventional military forces. Their unpredictability complicated assimilation. The lesson would influence future operations. Back on Mandalore, surviving warriors returned with alarming reports. The enemy could not be underestimated. Traditional victories proved temporary. Every successful tactic eventually lost effectiveness. For perhaps the first time, even veteran Mandalorians began viewing the Borg as an existential threat. Meanwhile, independent worlds across the Outer Rim faced increasingly difficult choices. Many lacked military strength sufficient to resist either the Republic or Separatists, much less the Borg. Some sought protection through alliances. Others attempted neutrality. A few explored darker alternatives, believing accommodation might spare them from destruction. Most discovered the same truth. The Borg had no interest in political arrangements. A world either remained independent or became assimilated. There was no middle ground. Throughout Hutt space, anxiety spread rapidly. The Hutts possessed enormous economic influence and extensive criminal networks. They were accustomed to manipulating events through wealth and leverage. Neither approach functioned against the collective. Entire smuggling operations vanished. Profitable territories became dangerous. Trade declined. Even the Hutts began considering coordinated responses. The galaxy's traditional power structures were starting to crack. Not because the Borg attacked every major faction directly. Because their existence disrupted everything. Fear altered decisions. Resources shifted. Priorities changed. The Clone Wars itself continued, but increasingly resembled a conflict unfolding in the shadow of something larger. Something approaching. Something growing stronger every day. Far beyond the frontier, the reason became clear. The new shipyards operated continuously. Fresh cubes emerged from construction complexes. Assimilated industrial worlds expanded production capacity. Captured technologies were integrated into Borg designs. Republic engineering innovations. Separatist manufacturing techniques. Droid processing architecture. Everything useful became part of the collective. The newly constructed vessels differed subtly from their predecessors. They incorporated lessons learned since arriving in the galaxy. Improved shield modulation. Enhanced hyperspace integration. More efficient drone deployment systems. The Borg were no longer outsiders struggling to understand their environment. They were becoming a product of it. The Star Wars galaxy was changing them. And they were changing the Star Wars galaxy in return. On Coruscant, military intelligence finally compiled comprehensive projections regarding Borg growth rates. The findings horrified everyone involved. If current expansion continued unchecked, the collective would possess fleet numbers rivaling major galactic governments within a few years. If additional industrial worlds fell, that timeline would shorten dramatically. If they mastered key aspects of galactic technology and logistics, the consequences became almost impossible to predict. The report reached the Jedi Council. It reached Count Dooku. It reached Darth Sidious. All three reached the same conclusion independently. Time was running out. The Borg had crossed an invisible threshold. They were no longer merely invading. They were establishing themselves. Building fleets. Building infrastructure. Building a future within the galaxy. And as bounty hunters tracked rumors, Mandalorians prepared for larger wars, criminal syndicates fortified their territories, and independent worlds searched desperately for protection, the Collective continued advancing toward regions far more valuable than any frontier system. The next stage of assimilation would not occur in forgotten corners of the Outer Rim. It would unfold where the entire galaxy could see it. The Republic had survived countless crises since the Clone Wars began. Entire sectors had fallen under Separatist control only to be reclaimed through sacrifice and determination. Massive fleets had been destroyed and rebuilt. Political scandals, military disasters, and Sith manipulation all lurked beneath the surface of galactic events. Through every challenge, one foundation remained constant. Kamino, the ocean world, stood at the heart of the Republic war machine. Hidden beyond violent storms and endless seas, its towering cloning facilities produced the soldiers who fought across thousands of battlefields. Every clone trooper serving the Republic originated from Kamino's laboratories. Every casualty sustained during the war could eventually be replaced because the cloning vats continued operating without interruption. For years, Separatist leaders had dreamed of destroying Kamino. None had succeeded. The planet's defenses were formidable. Clone garrisons remained vigilant. Republic fleets protected the surrounding systems. Even General Grievous had failed to permanently cripple the facilities despite previous attacks. The Borg viewed Kamino differently. They did not see a military target. They saw an opportunity. Within the vast consciousness of the Collective, analysis regarding the clone army had continued for months. Assimilated military databases revealed the Republic's dependence upon cloned soldiers. Captured strategic projections demonstrated how essential Kamino remained to the Republic war effort. Every simulation produced similar conclusions. Destroy Kamino. Weaken the Republic. Assimilate the survivors. The objective became inevitable. Far beyond the frontier, dozens of cubes altered their trajectories simultaneously. The campaign began. The first warning signs appeared along hyperspace corridors leading toward the Kamino sector. Republic listening posts vanished without explanation. Patrol groups failed to report scheduled status updates. Communications buoys ceased transmitting. Individually, such incidents appeared routine during wartime. Collectively, they formed a pattern. Unfortunately, the pattern emerged too late. By the time Republic intelligence identified the threat, the Borg had already positioned themselves for attack. The storm-racked skies of Kamino remained as relentless as ever when the invasion force arrived. Towering waves crashed against immense support pylons beneath the cloning cities. Lightning illuminated dark clouds stretching endlessly across the horizon. Kaminoan scientists continued their work while clone instructors oversaw training programs for the newest generation of soldiers. Then planetary defense sensors detected impossible readings. Dozens of them. Operators initially believed their systems had malfunctioned. The contacts exceeded expected parameters. No Separatist fleet possessed such unusual energy signatures. No Republic vessels matched the observed configurations. Moments later, emergency alerts echoed throughout the planet. Transwarp apertures opened above Kamino. The sky itself seemed to fracture. Massive green distortions appeared among the storm clouds. Then the cubes emerged. 20. More continued arriving. Gigantic structures materialized above the ocean world like metallic mountains descending from another reality. Green illumination reflected across turbulent waters while defensive command centers struggled to comprehend the scale of the threat. Kamino had never faced an invasion force of this magnitude. Not even the largest Separatist offensives approached its size. The Borg had come prepared. Planetary defense platforms opened fire immediately. Turbolaser batteries unleashed devastating bombardments. Orbital stations joined the attack. Kamino's protective fleet maneuvered into combat formation. The sky erupted into war. Crimson energy crossed the darkness as Republic defenders fought desperately to halt the advancing cubes. Several Borg vessels sustained visible damage. Entire sections of external structures exploded beneath concentrated fire. The Collective adapted. Shield frequencies shifted. Defensive matrices recalibrated. Weapons proving effective moments earlier suddenly lost much of their impact. The battle escalated. Republic commanders requested reinforcements. Emergency signals raced toward nearby sectors. Clone pilots launched in enormous numbers. V-19 Torrent starfighters swarmed around the invading cubes while ARC-170 squadrons targeted exposed systems. Hundreds of clone crews entered the fight within minutes. The Borg welcomed the resistance. Every engagement provided information. Every tactic offered lessons. Every casualty created opportunity. As the orbital battle intensified, transport signatures appeared throughout Kamino's upper atmosphere. The second phase had begun. Assimilation. Green beams descended through the storm clouds. Massive transport systems deployed drones directly into cloning facilities across the planet. Kaminoan security forces engaged immediately. Clone troopers rushed to defensive positions throughout the cities. The fighting inside the facilities became savage. Corridors filled with blaster fire. Explosions echoed through laboratories. Alarm sirens mixed with thunder from the endless storms outside. The Borg advanced relentlessly. Their objectives were precise. Capture cloning technology. Assimilate scientific personnel. Secure genetic archives. Destroy resistance. The Kaminoans fought with unexpected determination. Though rarely considered warriors, they understood what was at stake. Generations of research, genetic engineering, and scientific achievement existed within the cloning complexes. If the Borg acquired that knowledge, the consequences would be catastrophic. Unfortunately, the Collective understood that as well. Assimilation teams targeted research centers first. Data vaults fell. Laboratories were overrun. Scientists disappeared into the advancing tide of drones. Each captured researcher expanded Borg understanding of cloning technology. Each assimilated geneticist brought the Collective closer to a terrifying possibility: mass production of assimilated soldiers. Meanwhile, Republic reinforcements raced toward the system. The Jedi Council responded immediately upon receiving distress signals. Master Shock T, long associated with Kamino's defense, took command of local resistance efforts while additional Jedi task forces mobilized across nearby sectors. Obi-Wan Kenobi redirected available fleets. Anakin Skywalker did the same. Even normally contested regions temporarily suspended offensive operations as commanders recognized Kamino's importance. If the planet fell, the Clone Wars itself could change forever. The battle raged across multiple fronts simultaneously. In orbit, Republic warships fought desperately against overwhelming Borg numbers. Within the cities, clone troopers defended every corridor, laboratory, and training facility. Beneath the oceans, emergency evacuation procedures attempted to preserve critical genetic archives. Everywhere, the Collective advanced. The Borg had identified the Republic's greatest strategic vulnerability. Now they intended to exploit it completely. Master Shock T became the central figure in Kamino's defense. Moving from facility to facility, she coordinated resistance while engaging assimilation teams personally. Her lightsaber carved through drones with extraordinary efficiency. The Force allowed her to anticipate attacks and guide defenders through increasingly chaotic conditions. Yet even she recognized the horrifying reality unfolding around her. The Borg were learning. Every engagement produced new adaptations. Every defensive success became less effective over time. Several drones now carried modified shielding specifically designed to resist lightsaber strikes. Others employed electromagnetic systems that disrupted local communications and battlefield coordination. The enemy improved continuously. Republic losses mounted. Then the Collective achieved its greatest breakthrough. Within one of Kamino's primary research towers, assimilation teams reached the central genetic archives. The facility contains centuries of cloning data. Jango Fett's genetic templates. Behavioral conditioning programs. Growth acceleration techniques. Production methodologies refined over generations. The Borg seized everything. Across the Collective, countless processing systems immediately began analyzing the newly acquired information. The implications became apparent almost instantly. The clone army represented one of the most efficient military production systems ever encountered. Now the Borg possessed its secrets. The realization horrified Republic commanders when intelligence reports confirmed the breach. Kamino was no longer simply under attack. Its most valuable knowledge had already been compromised. Even victory could not fully undo the damage. Hours passed. The battle intensified. The skies above Kamino burned with constant explosions as reinforcements finally began arriving. Venator-class star destroyers emerged from hyperspace in growing numbers. Jedi-led fleets entered combat immediately. Fresh squadrons of clone pilots launched into the maelstrom. For the first time since the invasion began, Borg momentum slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. The Republic committed enormous resources to the defense. Anakin Skywalker arrived at the head of a major relief force. His aggressive tactics inflicted significant damage upon several cubes. Obi-Wan coordinated fleet movements with characteristic precision. Additional Jedi joined the struggle throughout the system. The fighting reached levels rarely seen even during the Clone Wars. Thousands of starfighters filled the skies. Capital ships exchanged devastating broadsides. Entire sections of orbital space became graveyards of wreckage and fire. The Republic refused to surrender Kamino. The Borg refused to retreat. Eventually, the collective reached its own conclusion. The primary objectives had been achieved. Cloning data acquired. Scientific personnel assimilated. Production facilities damaged. Further engagement offered diminishing returns. One by one, the cubes began withdrawing. Transwarp apertures opened. Damaged vessels disappeared into the darkness beyond known space. The invasion ended as suddenly as it had begun. The Republic held Kamino. Technically, the victory felt hollow. Entire cloning cities had been devastated. Thousands of clones and Kaminoans were dead. Critical infrastructure lay in ruins. Vast quantities of scientific knowledge had fallen into Borg hands. Most disturbing of all, the collective had learned exactly how the Republic created its armies. The aftermath revealed the true scale of the disaster. Production rates declined significantly. Several major facilities required extensive reconstruction. Replacement schedules for frontline clone units suffered immediate disruption. Military planners across the Republic faced a grim reality. The Clone Wars depended upon Kamino. Kamino had been wounded. And somewhere beyond the frontier, within enormous industrial worlds illuminated by green light, the Borg now possessed the knowledge necessary to replicate aspects of the cloning process themselves. The implications haunted every strategic projection. The Republic had survived the fall of Kamino. But survival was not victory. The collective had accomplished exactly what it intended. It had weakened the Republic, strengthened itself, and demonstrated that nowhere in the galaxy remained beyond its reach. As reconstruction began beneath Kamino's endless storms, a darker realization spread through military and political leadership alike. If the Borg could strike Kamino, they could strike anywhere. And the next target might not survive. The fall of Kamino changed everything. For years, the Clone Wars had defined the shape of galactic civilization. Every government, military commander, crime syndicate, and independent world measured events according to the conflict between the Republic and the Separatists. Entire generations had come to accept the war as the central reality of their lives. It influenced trade, politics, security, and survival itself. The Borg shattered that assumption. Kamino had not merely been attacked. It had been exposed as vulnerable. One of the most heavily protected worlds in Republic space had suffered catastrophic damage despite enormous defensive preparations. The collective had penetrated its defenses, stolen its secrets, and withdrawn on its own terms. Every major power in the galaxy understood the message. No world was untouchable. No fleet was large enough. No government was secure. And while leaders debated responses, the Borg continued advancing. Entire sectors began disappearing. At first, reports arrived slowly. A remote system failed to respond to communications. Then a neighboring colony vanished from hyperspace traffic. Merchant vessels disappeared along established routes. Listening posts went silent. Patrol fleets never returned. Then the pattern accelerated. Weeks later, Entire regions of space simply ceased functioning as part of the galaxy. Trade collapsed. Communications ended. Military reconnaissance missions vanished without explanation. When long-range probes eventually penetrated some of these lost territories, the images they transmitted horrified everyone who saw them. The sectors were gone. Not physically destroyed. Assimilated. Worlds glowed beneath artificial networks stretching across continents. Orbital facilities had become massive Borg structures. Starships moved through local space in perfectly synchronized formations. Green illumination dominated systems that had once housed billions of independent lives. The collective was no longer raiding. It was consuming territory. The scale of expansion exceeded even the darkest predictions made by Republic intelligence. Every assimilated system increased Borg industrial capacity. Every captured population increased Borg processing power. Every conquered world expanded the collective's reach. For the first time since the Clone Wars began, Republic and Separatist leaders found themselves confronting a threat larger than their own conflict. Yet centuries of distrust could not vanish overnight. On Coruscant, emergency Senate sessions descended into political chaos. Many senators demanded massive military offensives against Borg-controlled regions. Others insisted on strengthening defenses around key worlds. Several influential factions still argued that the Separatists remained the greater threat. Across Separatist territory, similar debates unfolded. Corporate leaders feared losing manufacturing sectors. Military commanders feared losing fleets. Political officials feared appearing weak. Despite mounting evidence, old rivalries continued influencing decisions. The Borg benefited from every delay, every argument, every hesitation. Meanwhile, the Jedi Council struggled with a growing sense of urgency. Master Yoda had witnessed countless wars during his long life, but few developments disturbed him as deeply as the latest reports. Entire sectors had effectively ceased existing as independent civilizations. Billions of beings now served a collective consciousness that viewed individuality as a defect. The Force itself seemed troubled. Meditation became increasingly difficult. Visions grew darker. Many Jedi described sensing enormous voids spreading through the galaxy, regions where countless minds had merged into something unnatural and difficult to interpret through traditional Force perception. The Borg did not exist outside the Force. That much was now clear. Yet they interacted with it differently than any civilization the Jedi had ever encountered. The implications remained deeply unsettling. Master Windu argued that the Republic could no longer afford limited responses. Kamino had demonstrated the consequences of underestimating the enemy. Every day allowed the collective to grow stronger. Obi-Wan largely agreed. Anakin agreed even more strongly. Yet practical realities complicated every proposal. The Republic lacked sufficient forces to defend every threatened system. The clone army remained overstretched. Shipyards struggled to replace losses. Political support fractured along familiar lines. Military solutions alone appeared increasingly inadequate. Elsewhere, Count Dooku reached a similar conclusion through entirely different reasoning. The Separatist leader stood within a command center overlooking vast tactical displays. System after system changed color as intelligence updates arrived. Each represented territory either lost to the Borg or threatened by imminent assimilation. Dooku despised the Republic. He remained committed to defeating it. Yet he also recognized mathematics. The collective's growth curve had become impossible to ignore. If expansion continued unchecked, eventually neither Republic nor Separatist space would remain beyond reach. Victory in the Clone Wars would become meaningless. One government would simply inherit a dying galaxy. For perhaps the first time since the conflict began, Dooku considered cooperation. The idea disgusted him. The necessity disturbed him even more. The same realization emerged throughout countless independent factions. The Hutts understood that profit required customers. Mandalorians understood that warriors required worlds worth defending. Smugglers understood that trade routes required functioning civilizations. Even criminal syndicates dependent upon chaos recognized that total assimilation benefited no one except the Borg. Survival itself was becoming a shared interest. The first tentative contacts occurred through unofficial channels. Neutral intermediaries facilitated discussions. Independent merchants carried messages. Bounty hunters transported intelligence between groups that would never communicate openly. Most meetings produced little progress. Decades of hostility remained difficult to overcome. Yet the situation continued deteriorating. And reality possessed a persuasive quality politics often lacked. The breakthrough came following the loss of 3 strategically important sectors near the Mid-Rim. The Collective launched simultaneous offensives across multiple regions. Republic defenses collapsed under overwhelming pressure. Separatist forces suffered equally devastating defeats. Several neutral systems vanished entirely. For the first time, both governments lost territory during the same campaign. Neither side could blame the other. Neither side could deny the truth. The Borg represented the primary threat. Shortly afterward, a series of secret negotiations began. The participants would have seemed impossible only months earlier. Republic military representatives, Separatist commanders, Mandalorian leaders, independent system delegates, smuggler network coordinators, even certain covert operatives whose true loyalties remained deliberately obscured. The meetings occurred in hidden locations far from major population centers. Security remained extreme. Distrust remained even greater. No one liked the arrangement. Everyone needed it. The discussions lasted for days. Arguments erupted constantly. Old grievances resurfaced. Accusations flew across conference tables. Yet beneath the hostility lay a simple reality. The galaxy was running out of options. Eventually, practical concerns overcame ideological differences. Intelligence sharing agreements emerged first. Republic reconnaissance data combined with Separatist sensor networks created a significantly clearer picture of Borg movements. Smuggler organizations contributed hyperspace information unavailable through official channels. Mandalorian scouts provided independent assessments from frontier regions. The results proved valuable immediately. For the first time, analysts could track major collective operations with reasonable accuracy. Joint defensive planning followed. Then limited military coordination. Then emergency response protocols. The coalition remained fragile. Yet it existed. Far from public attention, enemies became reluctant partners. Nowhere was the tension more apparent than among frontline forces. Republic clone officers found themselves receiving intelligence gathered by Separatist operatives. Mandalorian strike teams coordinated with Republic fleets despite years of mutual suspicion. Smugglers delivered supplies to worlds they would normally exploit. The arrangement felt unnatural. But it worked. At least temporarily. Unknown to most participants, another group quietly joined the emerging coalition. Sith operatives. Not openly. Not officially. But they participated nonetheless. Darth Sidious had spent years manipulating both sides of the Clone Wars. Publicly supporting cooperation would undermine carefully constructed plans. Yet allowing the Borg unrestricted expansion threatened those plans even more. Therefore, selected agents received new directives. Provide information. Encourage coordination. Eliminate obstacles. Preserve secrecy. The irony would have amused many observers. The Sith, architects of galactic division, now worked covertly to encourage limited unity. Not from altruism. From self-preservation. Even the Dark Lord recognized the danger posed by a galaxy consumed by the Collective. Meanwhile, the Borg continued advancing. The coalition's formation changed little initially. Entire systems still fell. Assimilation continued. Industrial production expanded. New cubes emerged from Borg shipyards in alarming numbers. The Collective remained confident. Every civilization they encountered eventually resisted. Every resistance eventually failed. This galaxy appeared no different. Yet subtle changes began appearing across operational reports. Target worlds survived longer than expected. Defensive fleets responded more efficiently. Military formations displayed unusual coordination despite originating from opposing governments. Patterns emerged. The Borg noticed. The galaxy was adapting. For the first time since their arrival, the collective encountered resistance operating on a scale capable of complicating expansion plans. Not stopping them, complicating them. That distinction mattered, because every additional delay granted the coalition something precious. Time to learn, time to prepare, time to build defenses capable of surviving future assaults. The largest demonstration occurred near the edge of a threatened sector containing multiple strategically important systems. Borg forces expected another routine conquest operation. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented. Republic warships emerged alongside Separatist vessels. Mandalorian cruisers joined the formation. Independent defense fleets reinforced both. Smuggler reconnaissance craft provided targeting data. For a brief moment, centuries of division gave way to necessity. The resulting battle became one of the largest engagements since the Borg entered the galaxy. The collective ultimately advanced, but not without cost. Several cubes suffered severe damage. Assimilation timetables slowed. Operational resources increased beyond projected requirements. The coalition had not achieved victory. Yet it had accomplished something equally important. It proved resistance remained possible. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread rapidly despite efforts to maintain secrecy. Citizens learned that former enemies had fought side by side. Rumors circulated regarding joint operations. Hope appeared in places where despair had begun taking root. The psychological impact proved significant. For months, the Borg had seemed unstoppable. Now evidence suggested otherwise. The enemy could be challenged. The enemy could bleed. The enemy could be delayed. Whether that would ultimately be enough remained uncertain. As the uneasy alliance expanded, fleets repositioned across threatened sectors. Intelligence networks merged. Defensive strategies evolved. Ancient enemies prepared to stand together against a threat larger than any of them. Yet, deep within assimilated space, countless processing nodes examined recent developments. The collective had noticed the change. The galaxy was becoming more difficult to consume. Resistance was increasing. Adaptation would be required. And as billions of interconnected minds searched for solutions, a new conclusion emerged. If unity strengthened their enemies, then unity itself must become the next target. The war was entering a new phase. One that would test not merely the strength of fleets and armies, but the fragile coalition holding the galaxy together. The Alliance had bought the galaxy time. Nothing more. Nothing less. 4 months, the combined efforts of Jedi, clone commanders, Separatist strategists, Mandalorian warriors, smugglers, and countless independent worlds had slowed the Borg advance. Entire sectors that would have fallen now remained contested. Major systems survived because fleets arrived before assimilation could begin. Intelligence networks identified threats faster than ever before. Yet despite these successes, the collective continued growing. Every battle inflicted losses upon the Borg. Every battle also provided new information. The Alliance adapted. The Borg adapted faster. Assimilated shipyards produced replacement vessels continuously. Captured industrial worlds expanded manufacturing output. Newly integrated populations increased processing capacity across the collective. The galaxy had prevented immediate collapse. It had not achieved victory. That reality became terrifyingly clear when Jedi seers across multiple systems experienced the same vision. A great darkness moving toward a brilliant light. A machine reaching toward the heart of something ancient. A wound spreading through the Force itself. The visions began with isolated reports. Individual Jedi Masters described unusual disturbances during meditation. Force-sensitive children awoke from nightmares depicting endless green storms swallowing stars. Even experienced members of the Jedi Council struggled to interpret what they were sensing. Then Master Yoda experienced the vision personally. Everything changed. The ancient Jedi Grand Master emerged from deep meditation visibly shaken. Those closest to him had witnessed countless crises throughout the Clone Wars, yet few had ever seen Yoda disturbed to such a degree. The Force had shown him something terrible. Not merely another invasion. Not another conquered world. Something far worse. The Borg had discovered a force nexus. The implications spread through the council chamber like wildfire. Across the galaxy existed places where the force flowed with unusual strength. Some were ancient Jedi temples. Others were forgotten Sith sanctuaries. A few predated both orders entirely, remnants of civilizations so old that even galactic records contained little information regarding them. These locations served as powerful focal points within the Force itself. Places where reality and spiritual energy intersected. Places capable of amplifying visions, strengthening connections, and influencing events across enormous distances. Most importantly, they represented concentrations of power unlike anything the Borg had encountered. The Collective had become fascinated with the Force months earlier. Now they had discovered its greatest source. Reconnaissance soon confirmed the worst fears of the Jedi. A massive Borg armada was moving toward Mortis. The name existed only within the most restricted archives. Even many Jedi Masters possessed little knowledge regarding the mysterious realm. Officially, it barely existed. Records described it as a place beyond ordinary understanding, a convergence point where the Force manifested on a scale almost impossible to comprehend. Anakin Skywalker knew more than most. He remembered fragments, visions, memories, experiences that often felt like dreams. Yet he understood one truth with absolute certainty. The Borg could never be allowed to reach it. Unfortunately, the Collective had already begun the journey. Throughout assimilated space, unprecedented activity unfolded. Hundreds of cubes altered course simultaneously. Industrial production shifted toward supporting a single massive operation. Entire fleets mobilized under unified directives. The Borg had reached their own conclusion. Every civilization in the galaxy drew power from the Force. The Jedi used it. The Sith used it. Countless cultures organized entire belief systems around it. Therefore, assimilation required understanding it. Control required mastering it. Perfection required integrating it. The Nexus represented the ultimate objective. Within the vast consciousness of the Collective, billions of minds processed possibilities. If the Force could be understood scientifically, it could be replicated. If it could be replicated, it could be integrated. If it could be integrated, then the Collective could evolve beyond anything it had previously imagined. The Borg were no longer attempting to conquer the galaxy. They were attempting to absorb the source of its greatest mystery. The response from both sides of the Clone Wars was immediate. Republic fleets mobilized. Separatist armadas abandoned ongoing campaigns. Emergency summons reached every available Jedi. Mandalorian clans committed warriors. Independent systems contributed whatever resources they possessed. The alliance had become stronger over time. Now it faced its greatest test. Because another unexpected development occurred simultaneously. Darth Sidious learned the truth. The Dark Lord of the Sith had manipulated galactic events for years, patiently constructing the future empire. He viewed nearly every crisis through the lens of opportunity. The Borg had initially represented a dangerous variable. Later, they became a potential weapon. More recently, they had become a threat requiring containment. The revelation concerning Mortis changed everything. Sidious understood power, perhaps better than anyone alive. The Force Nexus represented something beyond military strategy or political advantage. It represented the foundation of existence itself. If the Borg succeeded, the consequences could extend beyond governments and civilizations. The Force itself might be altered, corrupted, assimilated. Even the Sith could not permit such a possibility. For the first time in his life, Darth Sidious found himself preparing to defend something larger than personal ambition. Not out of morality, out of necessity. Count Dooku reached a similar conclusion. So did the Jedi Council. So did every being who truly understood what was at stake. The final confrontation began long before the first shots were fired. Massive fleets converged along routes leading toward the Nexus. Ancient hyperspace pathways that had remained unused for centuries suddenly filled with warships. Republic and Separatist vessels traveled side by side. Smuggler flotillas carried supplies and intelligence. Mandalorian cruisers escorted vulnerable transports. The galaxy moved as one, not united by ideology, united by survival. When the combined armada finally emerged near the Nexus, even veteran commanders found themselves stunned by what awaited them. The Borg had assembled their largest force yet. Hundreds of cubes occupied the surrounding void. Assimilated vessels from dozens of civilizations accompanied them. Gigantic construction platforms floated near the edge of the Nexus itself. Green energy illuminated space like an artificial sunrise. The collective intended to begin assimilation immediately. The battle erupted across a scale almost impossible to comprehend. Thousands of ships engaged simultaneously. Turbolasers transformed darkness into fire. Missiles streaked between formations. Fighter squadrons vanished into storms of energy. The largest battle in galactic history had begun. Yet the true struggle occurred elsewhere. Near the heart of the Nexus, specially designated teams fought desperately to prevent Borg infiltration. Jedi Masters led the effort. Unexpectedly, Sith agents participated as well. Neither side trusted the other. Neither side had time to care. Assimilation teams poured toward ancient structures saturated with force energy. Drones adapted continuously, employing technologies specifically designed to counter previous Jedi tactics. Lightsabers still destroyed them, but no longer as efficiently. The collective had learned. Years of observation and analysis now bore fruit. Several Jedi fell. Others continued forward. Every moment mattered. The Nexus pulsed with increasingly unstable energy as Borg systems attempted integration. Strange disturbances spread throughout the Force. Some Jedi experienced visions of impossible futures. Others felt their connection fluctuate unpredictably. The Force itself seemed to resist what was happening. Yet resistance alone would not stop the Borg. Anakin Skywalker realized that before anyone else. Standing at the center of the conflict, surrounded by collapsing structures and waves of advancing drones, he sensed the truth emerging from the chaos. The collective did not truly understand the Force. It understood information, patterns, data, systems. The Force was something different, something alive, something connected to choice itself. And choice remained the one thing the Borg could never fully comprehend. The realization spread among both Jedi and Sith participants. Victory would not come through overwhelming firepower. It would require sacrifice. The Nexus had to be sealed. Its pathways isolated from Borg influence. Doing so would trap enormous numbers of enemy forces within unstable regions of space. It would also strand many defenders. Perhaps permanently. The decision tore through the Alliance. Clone commanders volunteered immediately. Mandalorians followed. Several Jedi prepared without hesitation. Even certain Sith operatives accepted the necessity. For a brief moment, the divisions that had defined the galaxy seemed insignificant. Only the future mattered. The final operation began. As fleets continued battling overhead, teams throughout the Nexus activated ancient mechanisms and force-sensitive structures whose origins had long been forgotten. The process triggered catastrophic energy surges. Reality itself appeared to tremble. Massive shockwaves erupted through surrounding space. Entire Borg formations disappeared into expanding distortions. The collective fought desperately to maintain control. For the first time since arriving in the galaxy, it encountered something adaptation could not easily solve. The Force was not technology. It was not information. It was not machinery. It could not simply be assimilated. The Nexus rejected them. One by one, assimilation systems failed. Borg control networks fractured beneath impossible energy fluctuations. Entire sections of the Armada lost coordination. The Alliance seized the opportunity. Republic fleets attacked. Separatist warships advanced. Mandalorians charged directly into weakened formations. The battle reached its climax. Then the Nexus sealed. A blinding eruption of light consumed everything. Ships vanished. Structures collapsed. Space itself seemed to fold inward before exploding outward once more. For several terrifying moments, nobody knew what had happened. Then the sensors stabilized. The Nexus remained. The Borg presence around it did not. Much of the invasion force had vanished, destroyed, trapped, scattered. The greatest offensive in collective history had failed. Yet the victory came at tremendous cost. Thousands of ships were gone. Countless warriors never returned. Entire fleets existed only as wreckage drifting through silent space. The Alliance had survived. Barely. And as exhausted survivors surveyed the devastation, one realization spread through every command center and every surviving fleet. The war was not over. But for the first time since the Borg entered the galaxy, the Collective had suffered a defeat it could neither predict nor easily adapt to. The final outcome would now depend upon what remained of both sides after the greatest battle the galaxy had ever known. The galaxy did not celebrate. Not immediately. There were no grand victory parades across Coruscant. No declarations of triumph echoed through the Senate Rotunda. No spontaneous celebrations erupted across the core worlds. The cost had been too great. The final battle at the Force Nexus had ended the greatest offensive the Borg had ever attempted, but the scars left behind stretched across thousands of systems. Entire sectors remained devastated. Countless worlds had been assimilated before being liberated. Trade networks lay in ruins. Military fleets existed only as names listed among casualty reports. Most importantly, no one truly knew how many lives had been lost. The numbers exceeded calculation. Entire populations had disappeared into the Collective. Some had been rescued. Many had not. For the first time since the Clone Wars began, the Republic and Separatists found themselves facing a reality larger than their own war. The Borg threat had not merely attacked the galaxy. It had forced the galaxy to see itself clearly. In the weeks following the battle, reconnaissance forces pushed into former Borg territory. What they discovered shocked military analysts throughout known space. The Collective was collapsing. The catastrophic failure at the Force Nexus had crippled the central coordination systems linking vast portions of Borg-controlled space. Without perfect synchronization, many assimilation networks ceased functioning. Entire drone populations became inactive. Others entered confused, fragmented states as damaged command structures struggled to maintain control. Some cubes remained operational. Many did not. Several attempted to continue assimilation campaigns independently. Those efforts rarely succeeded. The Collective had relied upon absolute unity. The destruction of its primary expansion strategy had shattered that unity. Across liberated sectors, Republic and Separatist recovery teams encountered scenes unlike anything previously recorded in galactic history. Cities once covered in Borg machinery slowly returned to life. Former drones struggled to rediscover individual identities. Entire generations attempted to understand who they had been before assimilation. The process proved painful. Some survivors recovered quickly. Others never fully returned. The psychological wounds left by the Collective would endure for centuries. Yet despite the suffering, a remarkable truth emerged. The galaxy had survived. Against every prediction. Against every calculation. Against an enemy that had appeared unstoppable. Civilization endured. The Force endured. Freedom endured. The Borg had failed. The consequences of that failure soon began reshaping every major institution in the galaxy. Nowhere was this transformation more profound than within the Jedi Order. For generations, the Jedi had believed themselves uniquely qualified to protect galactic civilization. Their wisdom, training, and connection to the Force had guided the Republic through countless crises. The Borg challenged those assumptions. During the invasion, Jedi victories rarely came through lightsaber mastery alone. The Force had provided guidance, but survival required cooperation. Clone troopers, smugglers, Mandalorians, independent worlds, and even former enemies had proven equally essential. Many younger Jedi embraced this lesson. The galaxy could not be protected through isolation. The Jedi could not stand apart from ordinary beings and expect to understand their struggles. Even members of the Council began reconsidering long-held beliefs. Master Yoda spent countless hours reflecting upon what the Collective had revealed. The Borg represented the ultimate rejection of individuality, choice, and personal growth. Yet defeating them had required exactly those qualities: compassion, creativity, sacrifice, free will. The victory reinforced truths that many Jedi had gradually forgotten during years of war. The Force connected living beings. It did not erase their individuality. That lesson would influence the Order long after the Clone Wars ended. Elsewhere, Count Dooku confronted equally uncomfortable revelations. The Separatist leader had spent years condemning the Republic as corrupt and ineffective. In many ways, he remained correct. Yet the Borg had demonstrated something unexpected. Despite its flaws, the Republic inspired loyalty. Worlds fought for it. Citizens sacrificed for it. Allies rallied around it. The same could not always be said of the Confederacy. Many Separatist systems had fractured under pressure. Corporate interests frequently prioritized survival over principle. Internal divisions weakened coordinated resistance efforts. Dooku recognized the implications. The war he had helped create now appeared increasingly hollow. Millions had died fighting for political objectives that seemed insignificant compared to what the galaxy had nearly lost. The realization haunted him. Not enough to abandon his path, but enough to question it. Far deeper within the shadows, another figure faced even greater complications: Darth Sidious. The Dark Lord had spent decades constructing the perfect plan. Every conflict, every alliance, every betrayal had been carefully engineered to achieve a single objective: absolute power. The Clone Wars existed because he created them. The Republic's decline served his ambitions. The Jedi Order's destruction remained the final goal. Yet the Borg had introduced a variable beyond his control. For the first time in years, Sidious had been forced to react rather than manipulate. Forced to cooperate rather than dominate. Forced to defend a galaxy he intended to rule. The experience left an impression he could not entirely ignore. The collective represented what ultimate control truly looked like. Perfect obedience. Perfect conformity. Perfect submission. In theory, it resembled many Sith ambitions. In practice, it revealed something deeply flawed. The Borg possessed power without passion, order without ambition, control without purpose. They consumed endlessly because consumption itself had become their purpose. Even Sidious found such existence abhorrent. The irony amused him. The greatest threat to his plans had also reinforced his belief that true power required individuality. The Sith grand plan survived, but its future course would never be quite the same. Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, ordinary people drew their own conclusions. Former enemies who had fought side by side often maintained unexpected relationships. Republic officers continued communicating with former Separatist counterparts. Smuggling organizations preserved intelligence networks established during the crisis. Several independent worlds formed regional defense alliances that transcended previous political boundaries. The war had not ended. Yet something fundamental had changed. The galaxy now possessed a shared memory, a reminder that larger threats existed beyond internal divisions. The impact proved especially significant among the clones. Kamino remained damaged but operational. Reconstruction efforts continued around the clock. New generations of clone troopers entered service carrying stories of the Borg conflict alongside traditional military training. Many veterans emerged transformed by the experience. The collective had treated individuality as weakness. The clones had proven otherwise. Their distinct personalities, creativity, and independent thinking often succeeded where rigid systems failed. For soldiers engineered to serve, the lesson carried enormous significance. Across Mandalorian space, similar reflections occurred. Warriors who normally measured worth through combat had witnessed something unusual during the alliance. Victory had required more than strength. It required trust, cooperation, and sacrifice among groups that normally distrusted one another. Many clans viewed the experience as historic, not because of who they fought, because of who they fought beside. The stories would become legends, tales passed down for generations. The time when the galaxy stood together against extinction itself. As months became years, the remaining Borg enclaves gradually disappeared. Some were destroyed by coordinated military operations. Others collapsed from internal failures. A handful vanished into deep space, seeking refuge beyond explored regions. The Collective never again threatened the galaxy on the same scale. Its great invasion had ended. Its dream of assimilation had failed. Yet traces remained. Abandoned technology fascinated researchers. Former drones contributed unique perspectives to scientific understanding. Military academies studied Borg campaigns extensively. The lessons endured. Never underestimate adaptation. Never assume superiority. Never believe a civilization too advanced to fail. Most importantly, never forget the value of choice. In the end, that had been the true difference between the galaxy and the Collective. The Borg sought perfection through uniformity. The galaxy survived through diversity. Jedi and smugglers. Clones and Mandalorians. Republic officers and Separatist commanders. Heroes and villains. Light and dark. All flawed. All different. All free. Together, they accomplished what no single faction could have achieved alone. Years later, historians would debate countless details surrounding the conflict. They would analyze battles, political decisions, and military strategies. Scholars would argue about turning points and missed opportunities. Yet most agreed upon one conclusion. The Borg invasion represented the most important event of the Clone Wars. Not because it threatened the galaxy. Because it revealed what the galaxy truly was. A civilization worth saving. The Clone Wars continued. The Jedi Order endured. The Sith continued plotting in darkness. Political conflicts remained unresolved. History marched forward. But none of those institutions emerged unchanged. Each carried lessons learned from an enemy that had sought to erase everything that made life meaningful. And somewhere beyond the boundaries of known space, among silent stars untouched by civilization, the final remnants of the Collective drifted through darkness. Broken. Defeated. Remembering. While behind them, the galaxy they had tried to assimilate continued moving toward an uncertain future. Wounded. Divided. Imperfect. Free. The Borg came to the Star Wars galaxy believing they had discovered another civilization waiting to be perfected. They arrived with the certainty that had carried them across countless stars and through countless conquests. Every species they had encountered eventually succumbed to assimilation. Every culture ultimately became another voice within the Collective. Logic dictated that the Republic, the Separatists, the Jedi, and the Sith would be no different. Logic was wrong. What the Borg failed to understand was that the Star Wars galaxy had been shaped for millennia by conflict, contradiction, and choice. It was a civilization built upon competing ideals, clashing philosophies, and endless struggles between order and freedom. To the Borg, those divisions appeared to be weaknesses. In reality, they became the galaxy's greatest strength. The Collective adapted to technology. It adapted to military tactics. It adapted to lightsabers, starfighters, cloning, and droid armies. Yet it could never fully adapt to the one thing that defined every living being touched by the Force: the ability to choose. That choice changed everything. Jedi stood beside smugglers. Clone troopers fought alongside Mandalorians. Republic fleets coordinated with Separatist commanders. Even hidden Sith agents found themselves defending a galaxy they had once sought to dominate. The Borg invasion forced enemies to recognize a truth larger than their wars. Some threats transcend politics. Some battles determine the future of civilization itself. Although the Collective was ultimately defeated, victory carried a heavy price. Entire sectors were scarred forever. Billions suffered assimilation. The Clone Wars emerged transformed. The Jedi Order began questioning assumptions it had held for generations. The Sith Grand Plan survived, but not without unexpected lessons. Every major power learned that survival depended not merely upon strength, but upon cooperation when extinction stood at the door. In the years that followed, the Borg would become a warning whispered throughout the galaxy. A reminder that power without individuality becomes tyranny. That perfection without freedom becomes slavery. That unity imposed by force is not true unity at all. The galaxy remained flawed. The war continued. The future remained uncertain, but it remained free. And that was something the Collective could never understand.
The multiverse doesn't end here. New invasions, new empires, and new worlds collide daily. If you enjoy deep cinematic what-if scenarios like this, subscribe and join Multiverse Galaxy if